Good evening. Welcome to day 19 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. We are giving voice to words written by Black people all around the world, and that is across multiple genres, all types of topics, because we write about everything. We essentially live everything, and so we write about it. And so we are giving voice to those words written by Black people all around the world. And today our topic is gardening and farming. And we have two selections for today. One makes a return to our list this year, previously having been on our list earlier this year. And so, surprisingly, a totally different category, it makes a return. And so, we'll start with that one, and then we'll get to our next one. We want to remind you that you should subscribe to our website, greatblackreadaloudday.org, and subscribe to our YouTube pages and follow us online at Black Read Aloud. So, our first selection for today, I should say my name is LD Robinson, and I am here at the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. Our first selection for today for gardening and farming is our return to the last OG cookbook with Tracy Morgan and recipes by Nicole A. Taylor. And we are going to read something which I think is very pertinent to our current environment. We want to be reminded that millions of children go without food. And millions of children are underfed. And so it is extremely important that we talk about gardening and farming in our communities and Black communities around the world, because there are huge agribusinesses that have managed to, with the help of certain entities, have managed to put smaller Black farmers out of business. And so what we are used to, particularly what I'm used to and what I grew up with, I grew up in a farming community where we had everything that we needed. And, if you needed collard greens, somebody had them. If you needed peas, somebody had them. If you needed fruit, somebody had it. And so I believe I shared this last year, the first time I purchased fruit, I was a consultant and I'd been traveling and I was working in Michigan. I did not know fruit cost so much. I was astounded. I got back to my hotel and called my parents and told my dad, I said, I can't believe that fruit costs as much, because I wanted some oranges. And so I went to this farmer's market, and oranges were so expensive. And mind you, this was 2000. Oranges were so expensive. I could not believe it, because I had not had to purchase oranges in my life at that point. And at that point, I was 27 years old, I believe. And I had not had to purchase oranges because we always had a tree in our yard, and we always had neighbors or family that had citrus fruit. And so that part of being supplied with natural grown food from your own gardens and from your own orchards are that part is extremely important. And so what we're going to talk about, what we're going to read about in the last OG cookbook with Tracy Morgan, recipes by Nicole A. Taylor, is called Real Talk, Nutritional Inequality. In a 2008 Farm Bill, the USDA defined a food desert as an, quote, area in the United States with limited access to affordable and nutritious food, particularly such an area composed of predominantly lower income neighborhoods and communities, end quote. This means that a group of people, and more often than not minorities, live in a neighborhood where there is no supermarket and or very little access to fresh whole foods. They fall back on a reliance on processed foods, convenience stores, and fast food chains to feed their families. This leads to a diet full of fat, sugar, salt, and preservatives. Consequently, people face a higher risk of morbid obesity, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, and other food-related ailments. The problem disproportionately affects Black folks, since the phenomenon is largely found in low-income urban neighborhoods that have been neglected by public services as well as commercial investment, meaning people don't invest in the communities by putting grocery stores there. Compounding the problem is the fact that nutritional inequality creates a vicious cycle. A child raised only on processed foods develops a taste for only processed foods and is unlikely to break those habits in later life, then passing them on to the next generation. Though we may think of America as a land of plenty, ironically, in the middle of our biggest cities, there are millions who have little connection to decent food. Recent studies suggest the roots of the problem may have more to do with socioeconomic forces than with physical location. But there are points of hope for the future. Across the country, people are taking matters into their own hands and coming up with different ways to address nutritional inequality. For instance, New York has seen a resurgence of community gardens in the past decade. In Brooklyn alone, there are now more than 200 such gardens, which also often serve as gathering places for special events. Often, these are founded in abandoned plots of land sandwiched between other buildings. Often these are founded in abandoned plots of land sandwiched between other buildings. Participants each claim a piece of raised bed to plant vegetables, fruits, and herbs of their choice. On a larger scale, there is a new generation of urban farms that have sprouted up in New York and other cities like Chicago and Los Angeles. They may focus on demonstration and education, such as the youth farm, or they may focus on commercial harvesting, such as Gotham Greens, a rooftop farm specializing in greenhouse-grown vegetables and herbs. By coming together, people in every state are working to make healthier food more available. You just have to look around to discover the options, get involved, and maybe just dig into the dirt yourself and get started. That is our first selection from tonight for gardening and farming. It is The Last OG Cookbook with Tracy Morgan and recipes by Nicole A. Taylor. That book makes a second appearance on our list this year, and our first one being Humor Day. So it is back with a selection for gardening and farming. And now our second selection for today is an anthology, and it is We Are Each Other's Harvest, written by Natalie Baszile. And it is We Are Each Other's Harvest, celebrating African-American farmers, land, and legacy. And we are going to read a selection titled, give me 1 second, Little Farm, Big Dreams with Kamal Bell. Little Farm, Big Dreams. Sankofa Farms, Cedar Grove, North Carolina. The two-lane road to Sankofa Farms in Cedar Grove, North Carolina, winds through seemingly impenetrable walls of pine trees. In the distance, the sky threatens rain. But on this overcast morning, just after 7 o'clock a.m., it's strangely fitting that the skies above Sankofa are clear. In the 3 brief years since Kamal Bell founded Sankofa Farms, he's managed to make a name for himself. He has a friendly face and an easy smile that radiates light and positivity. He's the kind of guy you'd want as a neighbor. The average age of the American farmer is 65 years old. If farming, and especially Black farming, is going to continue, the industry needs to attract more young people like Kamal to take up the mantle. Bell grew up in Durham, where his earliest lessons in community organizing came from his experience in Catholic school, where he observed the Catholic community coming together to support ideas that push their community forward. Quote, if they need a school, they come together and do whatever it takes to add value, from individual family donations to fundraisers, end quote. Kamal attended North Carolina Agricultural and Technical University, A&T, where he planned to major in animal science until his passion for Black studies made him reconsider. Quote, I would go to the Black section of the library to read when I was supposed to be studying for class. I read all the Black leaders, Martin Delany, Malcolm X, Booker T. Washington, W.E. Du Bois, and I started asking myself how I could give back to my people and push our race forward. One day he came upon Elijah Muhammad's message to the Black man. I asked myself, what was I going to do for my people? So instead of me thinking I'm going to graduate and get a good job, I thought, I like agriculture. Both Elijah Muhammad and Booker T. Washington stressed that the farm could be an engine to help retool the Black community. So I thought, I'm going to try to be a farmer. The very next day, Kamal changed his major from animal science to animal industry, which focuses on farm production and livestock. Realizing he needed experience, he connected with a professor who specialized in swine production and worked in the swine unit at A&T for a year and a half. I got a lot of management experience. I got to work up close with animals, but I knew I needed to work with plants too. Fast forward 2 years when Kamal met his future wife, Amber. We had a child when I was a senior and she was a junior. I thought, all right, I'm having a kid. You can't run from your responsibilities. So I asked myself, how can I always make sure I have a structure to support our child? His first idea was to start a dehydrated pineapple and apple chip business in their apartment kitchen. He called the business Unity Farms. Soon, Kamal found himself balancing engagement, parenthood, saving money, and running a business. That business went really well. I saw a real transformation in consciousness with our customers. When I went to events and conferences, people ask, do you have a farm? I'd say no, but I'm working on it. As Kamal took the first steps to convert Unity Farms from a home-based business to an actual farm, he encountered the same obstacles as did so many Black farmers before him. The first came as he applied for a Farm Service Administration FSA loan to buy a piece of property. The FSA agents wouldn't return my calls or provide clarity on the farm loan process, but the universe worked in my favor, end quote, Kamal says. While searching for the local FSA director's contact information, he came across the name and number of an agent who was a fellow North Carolina A&T graduate. Quote, she was supposed to have been listed for another county, but she was listed by mistake, end quote. The agent helped Kamal with his application, which should have guaranteed his acceptance. But when he submitted his application, the local loan officer, Doc Jones, told him that his Unity Farms wasn't registered in North Carolina. His application couldn't be processed. Quote, I went back to the drawing board, end quote, he says. I happened to listen to a lecture by Amos Wilson in which he said we need to accept our African identities and build institutions using our culture. We need to stop using other people's culture and gravitate toward our own because there's power there. I'd taken an African history to 1800 course at A&T as an undergrad, so I thought, I'm going to name my farm Sankofa, which means go back and get, and derives from the Twi language in Ghana. It has a meaning to American Africans, and it also has a tie to the old Muhammad Speaks newspaper, which showed hands uniting from Africa and America. When our brothers and sisters in Africa, especially West Africa, see the symbol, they see that we haven't forgotten our ancestry. The symbol represents a bridge, bridging us together. Kamal changed the business's name and registered again with the state. But then the FSA agent informed him he needed a crop enterprise budget and an offer to purchase land. Luckily, the mother of Kamal's close college friend was a real estate agent. Quote, she's the bomb. We found this property by Universal Design. I never heard of Cedar Grove, end quote. But Kamal's fight wasn't over. Once he located the piece of property he wanted to buy, he prepared his loan application, but once again, the FSA agent wouldn't return his calls. Quote, I'm persistent if I really want something, end quote, Kamal says. But I put everything I had into getting this land, end quote. He drew strength and inspiration from an article in an online magazine, The Counter, about the famous class action lawsuit Pickford versus Glickman, and knew how the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, handled Black farmers' complaints and applications. Quote, just knowing that little bit of history was encouraging. Kamal turned in his application and was encouraged when the agent told him it was one of the best applications he had ever seen. So, Kamal was stunned when the agent called later to report that his application had been denied because his managerial experience couldn't be verified. He was working on his master's in agriculture education by that time. Quote, that didn't make sense because I worked on a swine farm for a year and a half. I'd done organic research with A&T through my master's for a year. I worked with a Black farmer in McLeansville for a year. I had letters of support from everyone I worked with saying I had managerial experience. They wanted to discount all of my farming experience, end quote. Kamal's only choice was to appeal the decision. Quote, I like to research. I like to read. I have an idea of how things have worked historically in this country. When I presented my case to the executive director, I gathered all the information I'd found. The quote from the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, saying he wanted young people to come back to farming. I included the article that talked about how 5 white men own more land in this country than 14 million Black people combined. The agent looked at me. He was like, whoa, we're going to try to work this out. The morning of the appeal, Kamal arrived early at the FSA office in Oxford, North Carolina. I tore them up in the appeal. I asked on what grounds they felt they could discount my managerial experience, given that I had the letters of support verifying that I had it. Kamal's appeal meeting lasted 30 minutes. A couple of days later, he received word that his application would advance to the next level. The day Kamal was set to close on it, but there were more obstacles to overcome. A couple of days later, he received word that his application would advance to the next level. Soon after, his loan was approved, but there were more obstacles to overcome. The day Kamal was set to close on the property, the agent forgot the check. How do you forget a check for $60,000? A process should have taken only 3 to 4 months, took 8. Kamal and Amber finally closed escrow on Sankofa Farms in March 2016, a challenging time to start planting. We did not have time to plant for the year. We still needed to purchase a tractor, groundwork and implements, and a shed to store materials that were needed for our operation. Meanwhile, the first installment on their loan was coming due in January, but they didn't have any way to generate revenue to make the first $10,000 payment, 9 short months after they had been approved for it. The loan officer had repeatedly encouraged Kamal to buy a home to use as collateral, but he had read about Eddie Wise, another Black farmer in North Carolina, whose pig farm and home had been seized by the USDA. That's how they get people, Kamal said. At the time, he was still teaching and was able to use his teaching income to pay the loan in the first year. It was as he reflected on the obstacles he'd encountered during the application process and the ways he'd prevailed that Kamal decided to start a program for young Black men. Early in his teaching year, he started a gardening at the middle school and saw how Black youth gravitated toward it. With that program's success in mind, he invited young Black teens ages 12 to 16 out to Sankofa Farms. 3 days a week, he drives 1 hour and 40 minutes to pick up his students. Currently, he has 6 young Black men in his year-round program. 2 have been with him for 4 years. Quote, this is an escape and a healing place for them. This is a place where they can solve the issues in our community. We don't just talk about food deserts. We talk about imperialism, our identities, who we are. This is a space where they can better themselves and change what they see in their communities. It's a tool of empowerment. Now, Kamal surveys the boundaries of his 12-acre property, which stretches out to a line of distant trees. The whole farm looked like this when we started, he says, pointing to a nearby section of rocky Orange County red clay covered with pine, cedar, and sweet gum trees. We've been battling this terrain for the last 3 years. My students are usually out here with me. We cleared all this land. by hand. Together, Kamal and his students have laid the irrigation system and installed tunnels which will eventually function as greenhouses. We've had to learn how to do everything from the ground up. When my students are finished here, they'll know enough to go out and get their own farms. In addition to growing vegetables, Kamal trains his students on beekeeping. When the Beekeepers Association in Durham learned that he was working with youth, they invited him to visit the association's apiary. Kamal was reluctant at first. I was scared of bees, he says. But one of his students, Cameron, was curious. It's the students' farm too. So anything they suggest we get, I say all right. Now his students are certified beekeepers. Their original 3 hives have grown to 18. His small batches of Sankofa Farms honey sell out as quickly as he's able to bottle them. The beekeeping adventures he offers on Airbnb have become one of the most popular experiences in the area. He also has an observation hive that he takes on the road to show students. Most of Sankofa's funding comes from grants. Through them, Kamal pays for everything from equipment and infrastructure to cover crops, with more funding on the way that will enable him to grow leafy greens year-round. He has also received equipment donations from Bayer Crop Science to dig a well. Quote, it's funny. In college, people tried to ding me for wanting to be a farmer, Kamal says. When I talk to them about wanting to be a farmer, they'd say, what are you going to do with that? You're going to be a poor farmer. You need to get another job. They even made jokes about my dehydrated chips. Some people I knew in college wanted to work for Microsoft. One of my classmates got a corporate job. He was excited about his paychecks. 4 of my classmates plan to be corporate executives. They said Kamal is going to be his own CEO, but he's going to be poor. Fast forward to now. Some people have had job transitions. Now they're asking me how they can work with Sankofa Farms. Kamal is currently growing squash, cowpeas, and watermelon. My main goal with Sankofa Farms is to get food to people in food deserts. He wants to partner with local churches to distribute the food he grows. That's going to take time to develop, Kamal says. I didn't take the traditional route. But to be able to keep this going for generations to come, that's going to take a whole lot more effort. Ever the student of history, Kamal is determined to learn from the older generation. We put the farm in a trust. We have a will to execute. This will ensure the farm is here beyond me. His eventual goal is to have a school on the farm. Quote, everybody is stuck on technology, but I'm looking at the people. I want to invest in the people. People are the innovation. I don't mean this to sound easy. I don't mean to make this sound easy. To keep the students inspired, to set up a model that's centered around youth and educate them so they can tell people in their community how to do this, that's where the power is. And this has been our second selection for today, Gardening and Farming, Day 19 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. Our second selection is We Are Each Other's Harvest, and it is by Natalie, Baszile, and there is the cover. And it is an anthology, and we recommend all the books here, and we read for educational purposes, and I want to stress that. It is to broaden and enlighten our listeners to the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. We want to share with our readers all the various works that are out there. You can see that we write about everything. There's not a single day that we cover in our Great Read Aloud month that we do not have selections upon selections that we can offer up as reading material. And so if you're looking to add things to your library, if there are topics that you want to discover more about, we want to tell you that you have a place to come. And we put our suggestions up, we put our selections up on our website at greatblackreadaloudday.org. And we will continue to do so as long as we're able to. And we have instructions to do so. It is day 19 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022, and it has been Gardening and Farming Day. We hope that you have um, learned something enlightening today, and that you will purpose in your, amongst yourselves and amongst your friends, that you will do what you can to bring your own food from the earth in as much as in as many ways as it's possible to do, eating and supporting Black farmers. Support your Black farmers, your local collard greens grower. Support him or her. Your local grapefruit provider, citrus provider. Support them. They need your support to keep something going that has been under attack to literally snuff out Black farmers in America. And so they need your support. And if you know Black farmers, give them a hand, buy some produce, buy their stock. It is part of what we have done to establish farming in this country and agriculture in this country, and it is a legacy that must continue. So we will see you tomorrow, of course, for day 20 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. Day 20 tomorrow is Detective and Mystery. And we have a great selection for tomorrow, I must tell you, and I'm excited about reading it tomorrow. And as always, and you say, well, you're excited every day. Well, yes, I am. I love to read. And so I love reading to you. Yes, I do. I love reading to you. And so we will be back tomorrow for Detective and Mystery and our selection about whodunit. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.